Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future. My name is Zach Gardner. I'm the chief architect at Keyhole Software. And 5, 6, 7 months ago, I went off on a little bit of a journey. I kept hearing about Chat GPT this, Chat GPT that. And little disclaimer, I thought it was going to go the way of blockchain. I thought it was going to be this fad that just hits the world and then kind of fizzles out. Well, looks like Bitcoin is up above, as of this recording, 70. Oh, no, we're at 66,000. So, but blockchain is back, generative AI here to stay. And I wanted to have a really well-rounded opinion. I wanted to know what this whole crazy generative AI thing was about. I wanted to talk to people that don't come from just a strictly application background like I do. I wanted to broaden my horizons. There's a time and a place for everything, and it's called a video cast. So I went out, I searched the four corners of the World Wide Web, and I found people from a lot of different backgrounds that were crazy enough to come and agree and speak with me. So today with me, I have Mark McKelvey, co-founder Stacked Analytics. Mark, how's it hanging?
Life is good. Thanks, Zach.
Very good, very good. Yeah, thank you again for being on. And of course, the disclaimer that is going to be on my tombstone, all the views and opinions are the views and opinions of the participants. May or may not be the views of the opinions of their company. It's okay. And do not necessarily reflect their employer, their trade organizations, any yacht clubs they are affiliated with, any loyalty programs that they have to any regional grocery stores. It's just two guys talking. We're just having a good time. So all the litigious people, you can turn that dial down to zero and, go back to ruining someone else's day. So, Mark, for those of the audience that don't know you, could you give us maybe a little bit about your background? How did you get into technology? What was your first computer? A lot of people have been mentioning that. And what excites you about being able to take data and use it to solve real world problems?
Sure. Um, my first computer, that's a hard question. My mom worked for King Radio and then Allied Signal. So we got a second phone line and a modem when I was about 12, which was 30 years ago. And I don't recall what the computer was, but I was online via DOS prompt way back then. The How did I get to where I am in my career? I started off in the military. I was doing signals intelligence analyst work. So basically, wireless signals. What did they come from? So you're using models to predict the source of this frequency and amplitude and all these other things we measure about signals that are floating through the air. Did that for a while. Got a degree in computer science, went off and did some web development work for the Army at their analytics center, and got really interested in operations research. This was kind of before data science was a term. So I did operations research for the Army. And then data science and big data came out and they were everywhere and everyone was excited. So I jumped off and went that direction in the kind of business world, no longer in the military world. Started as a data scientist. I did that and led a software engineering team building analytics software. And now I'm consulting and I'm having a lot of fun helping businesses utilize data and these kind of machine learning based technologies to find efficiency or develop new products.
Very cool. Yeah, fast Fourier transforms, I should get that as a little tattoo, FFT, if you know, you know. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention this before, but, thank you very much for your service to our country.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I don't have any family members in the Army. I have a few Navy and Air Force. Of course, us being residents of Kansas, we very rarely do I come across anyone that was in the Coast Guard. So
Right.
It's just a little Kansas humor, for those of us that are in the know. So as someone that comes from a web development background, going into, signals and now data, you have a really well-rounded foundation, I think, to be able to understand what are some of the interesting aspects of generative AI? What are some novel use cases? I'm curious if you've come across anything maybe in your personal life or even your professional life. Like, what are some really cool things that you've seen this technology used for, or maybe more interestingly, what are some of the things that people aren't talking about that they should be talking about?
Hmm. The so mostly my focus now is data and analytics. So I kind of view these large language models, well, generative AI in general, as a tool that I can use in building decisioning systems or helping companies understand their business. Uh, so I use these tools to read for me a lot. So you might read restaurant reviews, or you might read old reports. And when I'm reading, what I'm doing is extracting data. And from that data, I can then count things. So if I'm reading restaurant reviews, the topic that I'm or the purpose of reading it is to figure out, okay, what was this customer particularly upset about or happy about when they visited our restaurant. And then I can categorize a whole bunch of reviews without having a person do it and build a little dashboard that says, okay, on Mondays at this location, service is a little bit slower, or we have more reports of slower service than at other restaurants. Uh, so reading for me, I think is a use case that I come across quite a bit. I think all the kind of typical well um, promoted uses, summarization, retrieval augmented generation, um, natural language search. I've applied all of those in different applications, but normally it's about improving the user experience and maybe taking something that's very complex and like a research paper, publication, an article like that, and turning it into something that is more consumable by your average web user. I think that's a really interesting use case. I don't do much on the image side or video generation. I do use personally, ChatGPT and Dolly to produce images for my LinkedIn posts. That's kind of like a duh way to use it. Everyone should be using it to tune up your writing, I think, at least to get ideas. Typically, I start writing something and then I ask ChatGPT to improve it. And then I remove the words that I would never use from what ChatGPT gives me back.
Mhm. Yeah, there's some really strange idioms that it has. There's just words that it just throws out there, and it's like no one that actually speaks to another human being would ever use those words or like phrase it in that particular way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people using it for writer's block. When you have just this big piece of paper, or in the case of most of us, this big old white document, Word document on the screen, and it's completely blank, and you have to start from zero. Sometimes that can be pretty intimidating. So just getting initial ideas, just maybe like outlining, and then using a human to be able to fill in the gaps. I've heard that is like a very effective use case. And the image side, I think I actually used Dolly 3 to be able to generate the background image that's going to show up on the recording. So you can't see it,
There
but
you
I
go.
can, and it looks fantastic. Um, so natural language processing, retrieval augmented generation, that's actually come up several times in a lot of these conversations because one of the interesting use cases, or one of the interesting case studies that I've heard about, there was a lawyer in Florida. He was an eviction lawyer, and he had to write a brief for a judge for a case that he was working on. And he submitted his brief. The judge was looking at all the court cases that were referenced in this brief, and they didn't sound familiar. So he looked them up on LexisNexis or whatever tools judge uses these days, and he found that they just didn't exist. So he called the lawyer into his office and was like, "Hey, like, where'd you find this stuff?" And the
Mhm.
lawyer was like, "Well, I was really busy. I'm an eviction lawyer in Florida. These people don't get evicted themselves. And I might have used Chat GPT to create this brief, and I was too busy to be able to double check the references. So I just submitted it, and he got fined like a few $1,000s, if I recall. And that's kind of one of the benefits, but maybe one of the downsides that a lot of people have been talking about with things like Chat GPT is the ability for it to hallucinate, to ask it what was the name of the first elephant that walked on the moon. It'll be like, oh, it was Charlie. It's like, well, I mean, unless it's privy to some secret information that you and I don't have, I don't believe an elephant has ever walked on the moon. So retrieval augmented generation, being able to provide it a set of documents and tell it the answer is somewhere in here,
Mhm.
go look for it, that helps with the hallucinations. I'm curious though if you've ever come across anything that helps reduce hallucinations, or like why, like I don't even know if I could even accurately explain why these hallucinations exist, if it's just a byproduct of just the probabilistic nature of these tools.
What I'll touch on that. Yes, I mean that's what it is. But we want it to be creative, right? We don't want it to just give the same answer over and over again. That's what we've had for a long time. Uh, so creativity requires hallucination in these tools. If um, great articles online about it, why we need hallucination,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a retrieval augmented generation um, is the way that you combat that, uh, especially if you're building a product. So if you want to put it out there on your website, I mean, the value that you have to the reader or the browser is the content that you own. If they just wanted an answer from ChatGPT, they could go do that themselves. So having a voice and an opinion that comes from content that you are uh, comfortable with or have produced yourself. Um, so right, use it and make sure that your responses include references to that content. So you can provide links to here's more information about X, Y, or Z. You can also, if you're trying to sell something, uh, put that in the response. So embed ads or references to products that your company offers right in those responses, along with the content that says, yeah, this is the reason you should buy this weed killer or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think my lawn service makes for a great weed killer and a great grass killer too. No shade being thrown. I will not name names, but we are not returning as a customer. So you kind of mentioned it before, but I'm curious if you could touch on it more. How are you using it in your professional life? Are you using Chat GPT to be able to generate more? Have you tried anything related to like creation of PowerPoints, or uh, have you even tried running it locally? That's one of the things that I think really is going to blow up now that we're having a bit more power in the hands of consumer grade hardware. Have you tried running Llama locally yet? I have. It's a blast.
I have no interest in running anything locally. I try and do everything on cloud servers for a few reasons. It probably would be a fun little activity, I suppose. Um, you know, Professionally, I use it to help me write, to help me clean up content. Um, I have seen entire presentations produced by uploading some bullet points um, to one of these tools. I use it a lot for my clients more. I mean, I'm a consultant, so I'm trying to sell or I'm trying to produce products that serve my clients. And another example of how I'm doing that is I work with this company that has been around since the 70s, and they have always stored the output of their work in Word documents or Word perfect documents. um, but they can't use any of that in any efficient way to understand, oh, we already did work in this area. Let's see what we came up with. So using these models and really what I do is I extract particular data points and store those in a data warehouse so that we can set visualization tools like Power BI or something on top of them, which I think is somewhat of a novel use case.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, God, word perfect. I haven't thought about word perfect in quite a while. So
Mm,
it's a little blast from the past. Walmart, I've actually read, they have their own internally trained large language model. They did something similar. So I think with the firm you're talking about, they found that it was really difficult for people to be able to understand just the large corpus of resources that they have at their disposal from all these different documents, from all these different departments, from all these different eras of the company.
mm,
So using retrieval augmented generation, they were able to just load up everything, like every document. Of course, it had to be, readable by the machine. You can't just take
mm,
like a picture of something that's like super grainy and expect it to have very high fidelity. But they rolled it out in their corporate office and they found that it started saving them time because people could be like, hey, which document is this referenced in? Or hey, like, what are the three policies that relate to gifts that can be given to executives? What is the maximum contribution for that? If they were to ask their executive assistant for that, they'll have to go through all these documents, do a search, hope they can find it. But they did do what you were recommending. I think it's a really smart recommendation is not just ask it for the answer, ask it, where did you find the
yeah.
answer? So that I, the human, can curate the response and never just copy and paste directly out of there. That's a big no for
Mm,
anyone. And the only time I do that is with an image because I'm not pushing those pixels around. But I mean, if it's text, give me ideas, but I want to be the one to write.
yes, totally. Um, I wish I could push the pixels around in an image. I need to learn Photoshop or something because sometimes these images I get back are just not quite what I want, but it's really difficult to tell it. This is the part I don't like. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you just get something completely different. Um, I had a really interesting. Uh, I lost it. I had a thought. Maybe it'll come back to me.
It'll come back to us as soon as I stop the recording. It always happens. Always happens to me too.
One thing we haven't touched on yet is risks.
Yes.
I'd like to dive in a little bit to, what do I see as, the biggest risk with this technology? And um, I work with an organization that is all about expanding career pathways. So I think a lot, and I have a bunch of kids. I think a lot about what are my children, going to do in this future where we have Tesla bots that can learn to fold a shirt after watching me fold a shirt or whatever. We're going to have the Jetsons, I forget her name, maid walking around the house doing dishes or whatever. And I think that is the best question, right? Like, what do we do? I was looking at a chart the other day. It showed, um, jobs jobs taken away or replaced by industrialization or computers or automation, whatever you want to call it, and then jobs, created, and they follow the same path until the 90s when computers became um, more normal. Everybody had them, and it started to decline. So we're not replacing as many jobs as we're creating. And I think this generative technology and the robotics that will utilize it is going to further widen that gap. So we as a society need to think about what do we want humans to do? And I think what a wonderful question to be able to ask, but it might come with a lot of pain if we don't think a lot about it before it becomes a real problem.
Mm, very salient point. And Rosie was her name. It's
Yes,
the
Rosie, there you go.
it's the name of our little like robot cleaner that we have that goes around. What's that thing called? An iRoomba? It's one of those things.
Roomba, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So no, Mark, this is really good. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for agreeing to come on to the program. It's always a pleasure
Okay.
talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
Yep. And ladies and gentlemen, we will catch you in the future.